When Julian Croft, the CEO of Horizon Tech, announced the Project Vanguard list, my name was at the top. I was responsible for 70% of the company's revenue, and I saw my own name. The conference room fell silent, except for the hum of the air conditioning. On the large screen, the title Management Level Phased Compensation Optimization Plan was displayed. Below it, in the first column, was my name. Eleanor Vance, Head of Strategic Accounts. Salary reduced by 40%. Performance bonuses suspended. My hands were still resting on my keyboard. 10 minutes ago, I had just sent Julian the renewal projections for our 3 largest clients for the summer quarter. Those 3 contracts combined were enough to secure 70% of Horizon Tech's cash flow for the year. And 10 minutes later, I was the first to be optimized. Julian stood at the head of the long table, his suit impeccable, his tone steady. The company is undergoing an organizational adjustment. Senior management will lead by example. I hope everyone on this list understands. He didn't look at me, or rather, he deliberately avoided my gaze. Sitting to his right, Caleb Reed looked up gently and said in a low voice, "Julian, isn't this a bit too sudden? Eleanor is handling so many projects. Won't she be upset?" It was his 7th day at the company. His title was Special Advisor to the CEO, yet his desk was right next to the Strategic Accounts Department. He knew nothing about our clients or contracts but was already sitting in on executive meetings. Julian glanced at him, his voice softening. The company doesn't operate based on who works the hardest, but on the overall strategic arrangement. As he said this, someone in the room coughed. I saw the face of Marcus Thorne, the sales director I had personally mentored, change. He knew about the international video conference last month where I had slept only 8 hours over 3 consecutive days. He also knew that the company had survived last year because I had won back 3 major clients we were about to lose. But no one spoke, because the person who said it was Julian Croft, the CEO, and my husband of 5 years. I looked down and opened the Vanguard notification that had just synced to my email. I saw it was sent from HR, with Julian, the CFO, and the board office CC'd. The time was 9:27 a.m. This meant he had already signed off on it before the meeting even started. I downloaded the email and saved it, along with a photo of the presentation screen, to my personal cloud drive. My movements were so slight that no one noticed. Caleb was still talking. Actually, I can take a pay cut too. I just got here. We can't let Eleanor bear this all by herself. His voice was soft, his words well-crafted, but I saw the seating chart on his desk. It clearly stated, Strategic Accounts Team 1, Team 2, and Team 3 to be gradually transitioned to the Caleb Reed Project Synergy Group over the next 3 months. So it wasn't just a pay cut. He was planning to transfer my clients, my team, and my budget to him, piece by piece. I suddenly found it laughable. The year the company was founded, Julian sat on the floor of our rented apartment, holding a business plan no one believed in, and said to me, "Eleanor, when Horizon Tech makes it, I'll make sure you have the brightest seat in the house." I believed him. I went with him to meet investors, to chase clients, to get yelled at in conference rooms until 2 a.m. The company did make it, but the brightest seat was being given to Caleb Reed, and I was being put on a Vanguard list to make room for him. Julian finally turned to me. "Eleanor, you're a veteran of this company. You, more than anyone, need to understand the bigger picture." I had heard the phrase, the bigger picture, too many times. When Caleb first joined and didn't know the business, you need to train him that was for the bigger picture. Julian's mother likes Caleb, so don't mind her that was for the bigger picture. On my birthday, he went to the airport to pick up Caleb, saying he just got back to the country and didn't know anyone that was also for the bigger picture. Now I, who brought in 70% of the revenue, had to make way for him. And that, too, was for the bigger picture. I closed my laptop. The sound wasn't loud, but it made everyone at the table look over. Julian frowned. "The meeting isn't over." I stood up and pushed my chair back into place. "My part in it is?" Caleb flinched, putting on a look of deep concern. "Eleanor, please don't misunderstand. Julian didn't mean it that way. If you're unhappy, I can go talk to HR." "You don't have to," I said, looking at him. "You weren't the one who signed this list." Caleb's face went pale. Julian's voice finally dropped. "Eleanor, this is the office." "I know." I picked up my phone and showed him the email I had just saved, which is why I'm following company procedure. With that, I turned and walked out of the conference room. I heard a sharp intake of breath behind me. Julian called my name. "Eleanor Vance!" I didn't turn back. The hallway was long, and the glass walls reflected my face. No tears, no loss of control. I was even calmer than when I had first entered the meeting. The receptionist saw me and immediately stood up. "Miss Vance, is Sarah in?" "In ha-ea." I nodded and walked straight toward the Human Resources Department. My phone buzzed. A message from Julian. "Don't make a scene. Keep this professional." I stared at the text, paused for 2 seconds, then took a screenshot and saved it. He still thought I was just throwing a tantrum. The door to the HR office was ajar. Sarah Jenkins looked up and saw me. Her expression first surprised, then realizing. She stood up. "Eleanor." I placed my phone on her desk, showing her the Vanguard notification. "I need to process my resignation, right now." Sarah froze. "Right now?" She looked at me, her voice low. "Does Julian know?" I smiled. "He personally told me 10 minutes ago that the company isn't about who works the hardest, but about the overall strategic arrangement." Sarah didn't speak. She had been in HR for 6 years. She had seen me in the conference room at 3 a.m. revising proposals. She had also seen Julian hand the first glass of champagne at a celebration dinner to an investor, forgetting to introduce me standing right beside him. She opened the system, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. "Eleanor, you're in a key position. The standard procedure requires a 1-month transition period." I pushed a pre-organized folder toward her. All project timelines, client contacts, contract milestones, and risk assessments. I updated them last night. The handover person can sign off on it now. Sarah looked up in astonishment. I said calmly, "I always leave a clean paper trail." She finally understood I wasn't being impulsive. 10 minutes later, the resignation application was generated. I signed it and submitted it. The system popped up a notification. "Process has entered the approval stage." At the same time, hurried footsteps came from the direction of the conference room. Julian had arrived. He stood at the door of the HR office, his face grim. "Eleanor Vance, come out here." I didn't move. "If you have something to say it here." Sarah lowered her head, pretending to look at her computer. Julian suppressed his anger. "Do you have any idea what you're doing?" I looked at him, resigning. "Just because of the Vanguard list?" "No." I picked up a pen from Sarah's desk and signed the last page of the handover confirmation. "It's because I finally realized that to you, I will always come second to the bigger picture." His brow furrowed even deeper. "Caleb just joined the company. He's young and can be difficult. I'll move you back in 3 months. Do you have to blow this up right now?" A few employees walking by slowed their pace. Caleb had followed, standing behind Julian, his eyes wet. I looked at Julian and suddenly lost the last shred of desire to explain myself. So, in his eyes, my being put on a demotion list, having my team taken away, being publicly humiliated, all of it was just Caleb being difficult. And his compensation to me was to give me back what was rightfully mine in 3 months. I capped the pen. "Mr. Croft, the process is complete." Julian's face changed. "What did you call me?" I picked up my phone and bag and walked past him. "In the office, it's Mr. Croft, of course. As for home, we'll talk tonight." I didn't look at his expression. I only heard Caleb whisper behind me, "Julian, did I cause trouble for you?" Julian didn't answer. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside. In the reflection, I saw the ring on my left ring finger. I had worn it for 5 years. The inside was engraved with the words, "My Constant." I stared at it for a few seconds, then took it off and placed it deep inside my purse. The elevator doors slowly closed. This time, I wasn't holding up the bigger picture for anyone. By the time the elevator reached the ground floor, my phone was blowing up. The first call was from Julian. The second was also from Julian. The third was from Caleb. I didn't answer any of them. The young receptionist saw me come out, her eyes red. "Miss Vance, are you really leaving?" I took off my ID badge and placed it on the reception tray. "Yes." She opened her mouth, as if wanting to persuade me but not knowing where to start. The earliest employees of Horizon Tech all knew I wasn't just the boss's wife who had been parachuted in. Julian and I had painted the walls and moved the desks into our first office together. I had waited outside a client's building for 3 days just to get a 10-minute meeting with the person in charge for our first major contract. The first time our funding dried up, I sold my premarital condo to cover 2 months of company salaries. None of this was ever written into a company announcement. So today, the only thing written into an announcement was my demotion. Just as I reached the revolving door, I heard hurried footsteps. "Eleanor Vance." Julian had followed me down. Caleb trailing behind him, clutching a stack of files, looking flustered and innocent. Many employees in the lobby were watching. Julian lowered his voice. Do you have to make such an ugly scene at the office? I stopped. The ugly scene wasn't made by me. Caleb immediately stepped forward. Eleanor, please don't misunderstand. I really didn't know about that list. I'm new, I don't know anything. Julian just wanted me to get up to speed quickly. He didn't mean to take your compass. I glanced at him. Then what is that client transition plan in your hand? Caleb's face froze. He subconsciously tried to hide the files behind his back. Julian frowned. That's just a temporary collaboration. A collaboration that requires my clients to be divided into groups, and their budgets, authority, and contract approval paths to all be changed to his name? The lobby grew quieter. A flicker of annoyance finally crossed Julian's face. When did you become so vindictive? I let out a soft laugh. That sentence was more sobering than the demotion list. So, if I stop enduring, I'm being combative. If I ask for the facts, I'm not giving him face. I took a printed handover checklist from my bag. Mr. Croft, I've sent all project materials to HR and your email. Client communication logs, contract milestones, risk items, and outstanding payments, I've archived them all according to company policy. Julian was taken aback. He probably didn't expect me to resign by handing everything over impeccably, rather than storming out and giving him a chance to find fault. You were prepared for this. Not for long, I said, placing the checklist on the reception desk. I just never let myself be the one holding the bag for anything I do. Caleb's eyes grew redder. Eleanor, do you think Julian has been paying too much attention to me since I came back? We just grew up together. He has always respected you. Respected me? I looked at Julian. His way of respecting me is to let me see my own name on a demotion list in an executive meeting, instead of telling me a single word beforehand? Julian's face darkened. I was planning to explain it to you after the meeting. Explain what? I stared at him. Explain that Caleb is just being difficult, so I need to be demoted to make way for him? Explain that you'll move me back in 3 months and that I should be grateful? At that, Caleb's expression completely froze. Because those were the exact words Julian had just said at the HR office door. The employees' gazes shifted. Some looked down at their phones, some looked at Caleb, and some looked at Julian. Julian's jaw tightened. Eleanor, that's enough. Enough, I nodded. I think so too. I turned to leave. Julian stepped squarely in front of me, blocking my path. His physical presence carried a familiar sense of command. For the past 5 years, whenever he held me like this, I would stop. At networking events, at his family's dinner table, when I wanted to defend myself. One grip, and I would endure it for him. Not today. I looked at him coldly. Step aside. Julian froze. Eleanor? I said, let go. My voice wasn't loud, but the whole lobby heard it. Caleb let out a soft gasp. Julian finally released his grip. A faint red mark remained on my wrist. I took a sanitizing wipe from my bag and cleaned the spot, as if wiping away the last trace of a habit. Julian, before today, I was your wife and the head of business for this company. After today, at least the second role has ended. He stared at me. You think the clients will follow you if you leave the company? I don't think that, I said, putting the wipe away. But I do know that clients won't stick with a company that can so casually sacrifice its core leadership for long. Julian sneered. You think too highly of yourself. I nodded. Then let's just say I do. With that, I walked out of the company building. The late spring wind blew, carrying a hint of warmth. The driver, young Alex, ran out after me, holding my backup water bottle. Miss Vance, your bottle. I took it, thanks. He hesitated for a long time before whispering, Miss Vance, everyone knows you've been wronged. I shook my head. Being wronged is useless. I looked up at the glass facade of the building. From now on, everyone has to rely on their own merits. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a notification from the HR system. Your resignation application has been submitted, pending CEO approval. I looked at the message and immediately forwarded it to Sarah Jenkins. According to my employment contract, I have the right to request immediate termination of my contract. All handover materials have been submitted. Please provide written confirmation of the calculation for unused vacation days, performance bonuses, and vested stock options as per policy. Sarah replied quickly. Understood, Eleanor. I got into the car, opened my laptop, and backed up all my personal files from the company's cloud drive one more time. For years, Julian had called me his anchor. But even anchors get tired. Halfway there, Julian's call came again. I declined it. He sent a text. "We'll talk when you get home tonight." I looked at it for a long time and replied with 4 words. "We can clear things up." Then I opened an app and ordered 10 large cardboard boxes. Not to move my things from the office, but to move out of our home. At 7 p.m., I returned to our marital home. The lock recognized my fingerprint and clicked softly. We had bought this house in the 2nd year of our marriage. I had designed the layout. I had hand-picked the lamp in the living room. Even the small tray for keys in the entryway was something I had brought back from a small shop during a business trip. But today, standing at the door, the place felt as unfamiliar as a model home. Julian wasn't back yet. He probably thought I would be like before, waiting for him in the living room with dinner ready, waiting to hear his explanations, waiting to hear him blame it all on me being too sensitive. I didn't turn on the living room lights. I went straight to the study and opened the safe. Inside were 3 categories of documents. First, my personal IDs, proof of premarital assets, and the bank records from when I sold my condo to fund the company. Second, the early loan agreements for Horizon Tech and the documents releasing me from the personal guarantees I had signed. Third, the ownership records for the company's major projects over the years. I hadn't prepared these today. I came from a business background. I knew the most unreliable thing in the world was a verbal promise. Julian used to say we were husband and wife. We didn't need to be so meticulous. I had laughed and said that being clear now prevents misunderstandings later. He didn't like hearing it, but I kept the records anyway. Not to guard against him, but to guard against a day when I couldn't even articulate what I had given. I packed the documents into the boxes, one by one. Suddenly, my phone lit up. It was a friend request from Caleb. The note read, "Eleanor, I'm sorry. I really don't want to affect you and Julian." I glanced at it and didn't accept. A second later, he sent a text message. "Eleanor, I know you don't like me, but Julian has been really tired these past few years. He said he can only stop being a CEO when he's with me. You're his wife. You should want him to be relaxed more than I do, right?" I stared at the message, motionless for a long time. So he didn't just want to get into the company, he wanted to get into my marriage, to tell me that he was the one Julian could relax with. I took a screenshot and saved it, then continued packing. At 8:30, the door opened. Julian came in, still carrying the chill from outside. He saw the cardboard boxes at the study door and stopped. "What are you doing?" I sealed the last document in a bag, moving out. His face changed. "Eleanor, the resignation, I can treat it as an impulse, but what does moving out mean?" "Exactly what it sounds like." He walked in and saw the half-empty safe. His voice hardened. "You're even taking the documents from the house?" "My personal documents, of course I'm taking them." Julian stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. "Do you have to take things this far?" I turned to face him. "Which step is that?" "When you put me on the demotion list, did you think about that step? When you placed Caleb in my department, preparing to hand over my clients, did you think about that step?" He pressed his temples. "I told you, Caleb just joined the company. He needs opportunities. You're capable. Taking a step back temporarily won't affect you." I laughed, so I took a step back. He was stunned. "You know that's not what I mean." "I know." I pushed a box toward the door. "You mean I should step back but not actually leave? I should give up my position, but still be responsible for cleaning up the mess. My salary can be cut, but I can't be unhappy. I should be replaced, but I still have to teach my replacement how to take my place." Julian fell silent. Because I was right. After a few seconds, he softened his tone. "Eleanor, we've been married for 5 years. You don't need to negate everything between us just because of a work arrangement." "A work arrangement?" I took out my phone and showed him Caleb's text message. He told me, "You only stop being a CEO when you're with him." Is this also a work arrangement? Julian saw the message and frowned. He didn't mean it that way. "You haven't even asked him, and you already know he didn't mean it that way?" My voice was light. "Julian, you're too practiced at defending him." A flash of irritation crossed his eyes. "Caleb's family went through a tough time. He hasn't had it easy these years." "Have I?" The study fell silent for a moment. I looked at him. The year the company was at its worst, I flew to 4 cities in one day. I was hospitalized with acute gastritis and pulled out the IV the next morning to go sign a contract. Your mother criticized me for not being a proper wife, for always being out in the world. I didn't say a word back. You got drunk and threw up all over me, and I took care of you until dawn before heading to a client meeting. "Julian, have I had it easy?" His lips moved, but no words came out. I knew he wasn't ignorant of it. He was just used to it, used to me not crying out in pain, not complaining, not fighting for myself. So when Caleb came back, all he had to do was redden his eyes, and Julian felt he needed protection, while I could always endure a little more. Julian took a step closer, trying to take my hand. I avoided it. His hand hung in midair. Eleanor, don't be like this. Like what? Don't talk to me like it's a negotiation. I looked up. Then, how do you want me to talk? Cry and beg you not to cut my salary, not to give my clients to Caleb, not to let him take my position? He was silent. I placed the ring box on the desk. I took the ring off. Julian's expression changed instantly. Eleanor, resigning is a work decision. Moving out is a life decision. As for our marriage, we can go through the legal process. He looked as if he'd been stung. You want a divorce? I'm considering it. Just because of Caleb? I looked at him and suddenly felt that he truly didn't understand. Not because of Caleb, I said, word by word. It's because when you had to choose between him and me, you never once chose me. The doorbell rang. The movers had arrived. 2 men came in, saw the tense atmosphere, and moved with quiet care. Julian stood at the study door, watching me move the boxes out one by one. He didn't stop me again. But at the very end, he suddenly asked, "Where are you going tonight?" "A hotel. I'll drive you." "No need." I picked up my bag and walked to the entryway. Our slippers used to be there, side by side. Now, mine were packed in a box. Julian followed, his voice much softer. "Eleanor, you can go, but don't turn off your location sharing. I'll worry." I took out my phone and, in front of him, turned off location sharing. "From today on, you don't need to know where I am." His face paled slightly. I opened the door. From behind me, he finally called out, "Are you really sure you can let this go?" I didn't turn back. There are too many things I couldn't let go of. I paused. But I can't afford to not let go of myself anymore. The moment the door closed, I heard something crash to the floor inside. Maybe it was the ring box. Maybe it was Julian's belated panic. But that was no longer a mess for me to clean up. The next morning at 9 a.m., Caleb was sitting in my office. This was a photo sent to me by a colleague, Megan. In the picture, he was wearing a cream-colored suit, sitting in my old chair. On the desk was a hot latte and a bouquet of pink roses. The text was just one sentence. "Eleanor, he had the admin throw out the plant you left behind." I stared at the photo for a few seconds without replying. That plant was a gift from the team when the company survived its first year. It had moved with me from a tiny 100 square foot attic to this full-floor office. Its leaves were lush. Caleb threw it out on his first day. It was just like him to occupy someone's space. You first erase all traces of their existence. At 10 a.m., the video conference with David Bennett began. He was one of Horizon Tech's biggest clients, a client I had served for 4 years. This meeting was supposed to be chaired by me, focusing on the renewal of their supply chain digitalization system for the second half of the year. I had archived all the meeting materials before I left. My colleague said that as long as Caleb followed the procedure, nothing should go wrong. But at 10:20, Megan sent another message. "Eleanor, Caleb changed the pricing." I replied with a question mark. Megan sent a screenshot. Caleb had changed the original phase delivery plan to a one-time all-inclusive package and had cut the maintenance fees by 30%. This wasn't a discount. It was burying all the project's long-term risks. The client might see a short-term gain, but the company would inevitably lose money in the long run, and the delivery team wouldn't be able to handle it. Just as I finished reading, David Bennett's call came through. I answered, "Mr. Bennett." His voice was tight with anger. "Eleanor, are you still representing Horizon?" I paused for a second. "I officially resigned yesterday." There was a 2-second silence on the other end. "No wonder," he said with a cold laugh. "That Mr. Reed just told me he's taking over the project." He couldn't even explain why we split the first phase into 3 modules, yet he's offering to cut the price as a courtesy to a loyal client. I didn't comment on Caleb. "Mr. Bennett, according to company procedure, they should have my handover documents." "Documents are one thing," David Bennett said. "What I want to know is, if this project runs into problems later, who is responsible? That's the key." "I can no longer vouch for Horizon," I stated. "Mr. Bennett, I've already resigned. I can't make any commitments on Horizon's behalf. You need to get written confirmation of the responsible party." "Understood." "Good." Before he hung up, his tone softened. "Eleanor, let's talk separately when you have a chance." I didn't immediately agree, just said, Thank you for your trust, Mr. Bennett. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and created a new folder named Post-Resignation Risk Boundary. The first file was a written record of the call I just had. I sent an email to David Bennett, the content simple, confirming I had initiated my resignation process on a specific date and no longer represented Horizon Tech in any pricing, contract, or delivery commitments. I CC'd Horizon Tech's public project email address. 15 minutes later, Julian's call came. I answered. He started with an accusation. What's the meaning of that email you sent to David Bennett? It means what it says. You know how much David relies on you. What do you think he'll think of the company if you send that? My tone was level. He'll know where the lines of responsibility are. Julian's voice was strained with anger. Eleanor, you can resign, but don't sabotage the company. Julian, am I the one sabotaging it? There was a pause on the other end. I continued. Before Caleb changed the pricing, did he review the Phase 1 delivery records? Did he consult the tech team about the costs? Did he confirm the client's hidden requirements? He said irritably, he just took over. It's normal for him to be unfamiliar. Can't you just give him a heads up privately? Give who a heads up? Caleb? I let out a laugh. Mr. Croft, you demoted me, handed my clients to him, and now you want me to privately teach him how to not make mistakes. Don't you find that absurd? His voice dropped. Eleanor, can you stop being so sharp with every word? I'm already being very polite. I opened the revised proposal from Caleb. If I weren't being polite, I could tell David Bennett right now that this proposal has significant delivery risks. Julian fell silent. He knew I was telling the truth. After a few seconds, he changed his tone. Come back tonight. We need to talk properly. I'm not going back. Then I'll come to you. There's no need. He seemed to grit his teeth. Which hotel are you at? I glanced at the disabled location sharing. None of your business. He hung up. In the afternoon, Megan told me David Bennett's video call ended early. Caleb completely shut down and got defensive during the meeting. The reason was that David had asked him 3 questions. Why was the Phase 1 system delayed by 2 weeks? Why couldn't the client's internal permission levels be merged? And why couldn't the Phase 2 maintenance fees be pushed down to 10%? Caleb couldn't answer a single one. Julian had to step in to save face, but David Bennett only said one thing. Mr. Croft, I'm not here to train your new hires. That sentence spread throughout the entire strategic accounts department. At 4 p.m., Marcus Thorne called me. His voice was low. Eleanor, the team is in chaos. What happened? Caleb is demanding we give him access to all client files, including your old private communication notes. We're refusing, but he says it's on Julian's orders. My fingers paused. Those communication notes contained a lot of sensitive information. Not confidential secrets, but things built on trust. A client's family member being sick, a manager's potential job change, a specific time when public pressure was a bad idea, a certain tech director who hated Friday meetings. These were details I had accumulated over time. They weren't toys for Caleb to use to prove his capabilities. Marcus, according to company policy, you only need to hand over formally archived documents. Private notes are not part of the handover obligation. Marcus breathed a sigh of relief. I get it now. He paused, then added, Eleanor, are you really not coming back? I looked out the window. The traffic below the hotel was fast, people coming and going. No one's life stops because someone else leaves. Marcus, don't pin your hopes on someone who has already left. You all need to protect your own professional boundaries. He was silent for a long time. Understood. After the call, I received a message from Julian. Caleb was grilled by the client and cried today. Are you satisfied? I stared at the screen, my fingertips pausing for a few seconds before I replied. Asking questions is not grilling. Being unable to answer is the problem. He didn't reply. At 9 p.m., Caleb posted on his social media. The picture was of the pink roses on his office desk. The caption read, Some positions carry a heavy weight, but I will work hard not to disappoint the people who believe in me. I saw Megan had liked the post. Not an agreement, but to send me a screenshot. I replied to her, Ignore him. Just document your own work. Megan sent back a crying, laughing emoji. 10 minutes later, Emily Foster, a finance manager I used to work with closely, sent me a budget screenshot. Caleb's special client relations budget had been increased by an additional $150,000. The approver was Julian Croft. The purpose noted was client relationship restoration. brand image maintenance, special entertainment. I stared at the text and finally understood what Caleb was trying to do. He couldn't handle the projects, so he was trying to throw money at the problem. And this money was originally meant for my team's next quarter delivery assurance budget. I saved the screenshot. Emily sent a message. Eleanor, I don't know if this counts as evidence, but I thought you should know. I replied, it counts. Thank you. That night, I organized 3 sets of documents: the Project Vanguard list, the client transition plan, and the record of Caleb's budget adjustment. Individually, they were all internal company arrangements. But together, they formed a complete timeline. Julian hadn't acted on impulse. He had planned all along for me to step aside for Caleb. He just never expected that I would actually leave. On the 3rd day, Horizon Tech imploded. First, David Bennett's company sent a formal letter to suspend project progression. The wording was restrained. Due to significant adjustments in the project's responsible party and delivery plan, a reassessment of cooperation risk is required. Then, 2 other long-term clients also requested to suspend renewal negotiations for similar reasons: change of leadership, unstable proposals, and uncertain delivery risks. Julian didn't tell me this. Megan did. She said the entire strategic accounts department felt like it had hit a pause button. Caleb had been in Julian's office since morning and hadn't come out. Several project managers were in a conference room, arguing so loudly they were about to throw computers. I felt no pleasure in their misfortune. I just opened my calendar and looked at the date. 3 days. Julian once said that if I left, the clients wouldn't follow me. Now, the clients hadn't followed me, but they had stopped to see who was actually responsible for their money and their risk. At 10:40 a.m., Sarah Jenkins from HR messaged me. Eleanor, Julian is in HR. A moment later, she sent another. He's demanding to retract your resignation application. I stared at the message without replying. Less than a minute later, Julian's call came. I answered and enabled the recording prompt. Julian, this call will be recorded. He was clearly taken aback. What do you mean? Protecting my boundaries. He took a deep breath. Eleanor, come back. This isn't a request, it's an order. I leaned back in my chair. In what capacity? As the head of strategic accounts. Will my salary be restored? Yes. Will my team's authority be restored? Yes. Will Caleb be removed from the projects? There was silence on the other end. I laughed softly. See? You know exactly what the problem is. Julian's voice turned cold. Now is not the time to argue about these things. 3 clients have paused cooperation. The company will be in a very difficult position. That's the company's problem. You are part of the founding team. And yesterday, I was the first name on the demotion list. He was cornered. After a moment, he said, I can withdraw the list. You can't withdraw the humiliation that's already been sent out. He lowered his voice. Eleanor, must you be so calculating? Yes. I looked at the organized files on my computer. From today on, we're going to count every single thing. I could hear Sarah's voice in the background, likely trying to calm him down. But Julian suddenly raised his voice. Sarah, you go and reject his resignation process right now. Sarah's voice was troubled. Mr. Croft, Eleanor has already completed the handover confirmation, and there is no mandatory retention clause in our contract. You didn't reject it in the system yesterday, so it automatically entered the effective stage. I'm the CEO, but the system records and the employment contract are both there. This reminded me of many years ago when the company was just starting. Julian hated non-compliance. He said, Eleanor, when the company gets bigger, all processes have to be auditable. He never imagined that an auditable process would one day block him. There was a loud thud on the phone, like he had slammed his hand on a table. She's my wife. Sarah was quiet for a second. Mr. Croft, Eleanor's resignation is as an employee, not as a wife. Holding the phone, I felt a mix of absurdity and satisfaction. He had finally said it. She's my wife, so she can be demoted, sacrificed, and replaced by Caleb. And when the company is in crisis, she can be dragged back by her status as a wife. I spoke. Julian. The other end fell silent. Did you hear what Sarah said? His breathing was heavy. I said, as an employee, we follow the employment contract. As husband and wife, we follow marriage law. Julian's voice was hoarse. Do you have to drag our marriage into this too? You started it, I said calmly. From the moment you used your status as a husband to demand I understand, Caleb. From the moment you thought that as your wife, I should just clean up your messes. Our marriage was already in it. Before I hung up, I heard Caleb's voice. He sounded frantic. Julian, maybe I should go apologize to Eleanor? I don't want you two to be like this because of me. Julian didn't answer. I hung up. 10 minutes later, Sarah sent me a photo. On the HR desk was my official resignation confirmation letter. Julian was standing next to it, his face terrifyingly dark. Sarah added a caption, "Eleanor, I processed it according to procedure." I replied, "Thank you. Be sure to keep a record of all directives." She replied with an understood. In the afternoon, various rumors started spreading in the company's internal chats. Some said I had deliberately taken clients with me to retaliate. Some said I was throwing a tantrum, banking on my status as the boss's wife. Others said Caleb was actually pitiful, handed a mess as soon as he arrived. I didn't offer any explanation. Explaining to an audience of gossipers is pointless. I only sent formal emails to the 3 key clients, reiterating that I had resigned and was not involved in any of Horizon Tech's project commitments. I added a sentence, "If independent risk assessment is needed in the future, we can communicate separately." I wasn't poaching clients. I was just extricating myself from a bad situation. In the evening, David Bennett replied to my email. "Eleanor, are you free tomorrow afternoon? Let's not talk about Horizon. Let's talk about your next steps." I looked at the message, and for the first time, felt a real sense of possibility. It turned out that without Julian, I wasn't just floating in a void. I still had my professional reputation, my judgment, and my own choices. At 7 p.m., Julian's mother called. I didn't answer. She sent a voice message. "Eleanor, what couple doesn't have arguments? Julian said you've taken this tantrum too far this time. It's even affecting the company. You should come back and help him stabilize the clients first. A supportive wife doesn't sabotage her husband's life's work. Think about the optics of this, Eleanor. You're ruining his reputation." I listened to it and saved it. I had heard this kind of talk countless times over the past 5 years. Julian's mother adored Caleb. She said Caleb knew how to be sweet, like a proper young man, while I was too capable, too calm, not like a wife. Now that the company was in trouble, she remembered I was Julian's wife. I replied with a text, "Ma'am, for company matters, please contact the person in charge of the company. For marital matters, I will discuss them with Julian." She quickly replied, "What did you call me?" I didn't reply again. At 10 p.m., Julian appeared downstairs at my hotel. The front desk called to tell me a Mr. Croft was here to see me. I stood by the window and looked down. His car was parked under a streetlight. He was leaning against the car door, head down, smoking. He rarely smoked before. I watched for a few seconds, then drew the curtains and told the front desk I wouldn't see him. At that moment, I knew he was truly panicking. But his panic wasn't because he had lost me, at least not yet. He was panicking because the company was out of control, the clients had paused, and Caleb couldn't hold on to his new position. He had finally discovered that I wasn't just a position that could be moved back in 3 months. I was a person he had personally deleted from the system. Julian's mother called from morning until noon. I didn't answer a single call. In the afternoon, she switched to the landline at the old family house. When I answered, her first words were, "Eleanor Vance, how long are you going to keep this up?" I sat at the desk in my hotel room, looking over a collaboration framework David Bennett had sent. "Ma'am, is there something I can help you with?" The title stung her. Her voice became shrill. "You don't even call me Mom anymore?" My marital status with Julian hasn't changed yet, but the salutation can be adjusted according to the temperature of the relationship. There was a 2-second silence on the other end. Julian's mother clearly didn't expect me to say that. She suppressed her anger. "Come to the family house for dinner tonight. Julian will be there too. Let's clear the air." For a wife to cause such a mess for her husband's company, what does that look like? I'm not the one who caused the mess. The clients have paused their contracts because of you. How is that not your doing? The clients paused because of a change in leadership and proposal risks. Julian's mother sneered. "Don't give me that corporate talk. In the end, you're just jealous that Caleb is back." I looked out the window. Sure enough, in their eyes, every problem could be boiled down to my jealousy of Caleb. I had intended to refuse, but after a moment's thought, I agreed. Some things are clearer when said at the Croft family dinner table than in private. At 7 p.m., I arrived at the old family house. The dining room was full. Julian's mother sat at the head of the table, Julian to her right, and Caleb was sitting next to Julian. He was wearing a light blue dress shirt, looking slightly disheveled. When he saw me, he immediately stood up. Eleanor, I didn't want to come, but Mrs. Croft said it would be better if we all talked things out. I glanced at him. It's good that you're here. His face changed slightly. Julian's mother slammed her hand on the table. Eleanor, what kind of attitude is that? Caleb is a guest. A guest sitting next to another woman's husband. How familiar. The room fell silent. Julian frowned. Eleanor Vance. I placed my bag on the empty chair next to me and sat down. Weren't we going to talk? Let's talk. Julian's mother said with a cold face. Eat first. I'm not hungry. You. Julian cut in. Mom, let's get to the point. He then looked at me. The company needs you to come back and stabilize the clients. Your salary, your position, I'll restore everything. The strategic accounts department will still be yours. And Caleb? I asked. Caleb immediately looked down. I can step back, as long as Eleanor is willing to come back. I never wanted to take anything in the first place. It's just that Julian felt I needed a chance to start over. I cut him off. Start over? Why did your start over have to begin in my office? Caleb's eyes welled up. Julian's mother immediately became defensive. You're her senior. Why can't you give him a break? Caleb has had a hard time over the years. He's not capable and savvy like you. He just got back to the country. Is it wrong for Julian to take care of him a little? No, it's not wrong to take care of him, I nodded. But to use my salary, my team, my clients, and my delivery budget to take care of him, that's wrong. Julian's mother was speechless. Julian said grimly, I admit my handling of this was not ideal. Not ideal, I said, taking a printed document from my bag and placing it on the Lazy Susan. It was premeditated. The Lazy Susan slowly spun to Julian's mother. She frowned and picked it up. The first page was the Project Vanguard list. The second, the client transition plan. The third, Caleb's special budget adjustment. The fourth, the request to move Caleb into my office. All the approval times were before the Vanguard meeting. Julian's face slowly darkened. Caleb gripped the fabric of his dress. Julian's mother didn't understand the business details, but she understood the dates. What is this? This, I said, is what you call me overreacting. No one in the dining room spoke. I continued. The demotion wasn't a last-minute decision. Caleb taking over wasn't a temporary collaboration. You all had it planned. You just didn't inform me. Julian looked at me. Where did you get these documents? From the system permissions I was entitled to. His eyes grew cold. You accessed company files after you resigned? The download timestamps for all these files are from before my resignation. I looked at him. Mr. Croft, you don't need to rush to pin a crime on me. Caleb suddenly burst into tears. Eleanor, I really didn't know this would hurt you. Julian just said you were very capable, that even if you temporarily gave up some resources, it wouldn't affect your position. I looked at him. Caleb, you don't have to push all the responsibility onto him. Your signature is also on the client transition plan. His face went white. Julian's mother immediately shielded him. He just joined the company. What does he know? He just signed what Julian told him to sign. Exactly, I laughed. So, I don't understand why someone who doesn't even know what he's signing is qualified to take over the strategic accounts department. The words hung in the air like a slap, and the dining room fell deathly silent. Julian finally spoke. That's enough. He looked at me, his voice low and strained. You were brought here tonight to solve a problem, not to put everyone on trial. I met his gaze. You're wrong. I placed another document on the table. I came here tonight to inform you that I will not be returning to the company. Julian's pupils contracted. I continued. Furthermore, I have already contacted a lawyer. A divorce agreement, division of marital assets, the early-stage funds I provided for the company, the distribution of my vested stock options, and the funds that were moved from my personal account for company use over the years, all of it needs to be reevaluated. Julian's mother shot to her feet. Eleanor Vance, are you trying to destroy Horizon? I'm not the one destroying it, I said, looking at Julian. He is, by treating me as someone who could be sacrificed at any time. Julian's face was grim. Do you have to take our marriage to this point? I picked up my bag. A marriage isn't one party always giving in, while the other always talks about the bigger picture. Caleb sobbed. Eleanor, please don't be like this. Julian has been so stressed these last few days. He does care about you. It's just that the pressure from the company is too much. I turned to look at him. Caleb, your cleverest trick is to always position yourself as someone who needs to be taken care of. His sobbing hitched for a moment. Unfortunately for you, I'm not taking care of you. With that, I stood up and left. Julian chased after me, stopping me at the front door of the old house. The night was cold. He looked at me, a clear exhaustion in his eyes for the first time. Eleanor, is divorce the only way? I didn't answer immediately. Over the past 5 years, I had waited for him so many times. Waited for him to see my hard work. Waited for him to defend me in front of his mother. Waited for him to reject Caleb's overstepping boundaries. Waited for him to give me even a single word of warning before my salary was cut. But he never did. Julian, I said, it's not that you don't know I feel pain. You just assume that after the pain, I'll still be here. His face went white. I walked around him toward my car. From behind, his voice was hoarse. Where are you going? I opened the car door. To live my own life. This time, he didn't follow. The next morning, Emily Foster from finance asked to meet me at a coffee shop. When she sat down, she looked around, making sure no one was following, before taking a USB drive from her bag. Eleanor, I'm not sure if I should give this to you. I didn't take it immediately. What's on it? Caleb's budget requests, expense reports, and a few versions of the client proposals he revised. Emily bit her lip. I don't want to take sides, but finance is being dragged into this now. He's asking us to classify some entertainment expenses as client maintenance, but the receipts don't match up. I looked at the USB drive. Have you documented these materials according to company policy? Yes. Without exceeding your authority? No. These were all things I was responsible for reviewing. Only then did I take it. Emily, thank you. But please protect yourself. Don't take risks for me. She gave a bitter smile. Eleanor, you used to say the same thing to us. I paused for a moment. She continued in a low voice. A lot of people at the company know you're not just throwing a tantrum. They're just afraid to speak up. I held my coffee cup, saying nothing. I used to think that as long as I did my job well, Julian would eventually see it. But the truth was, many people saw it. It was just that the one person who should have seen it chose not to. Back at my temporary office, I opened the USB drive. Caleb's proposals were even worse than I had imagined. He hadn't just changed the pricing. He had copied a large section of an old proposal I had written for David Bennett's company last year, changed the cover and a few numbers, and presented it to another client. The problem was, that old proposal had a lot of customized content. The clients were in different industries, with different system interfaces and different risk control logic. A direct copy-paste was a recipe for disaster. I put the two proposals side by side on my screen, highlighting the differences in red, one by one. At 2 p.m., a message from Julian arrived. Did you take company documents? I laughed at the accusation. He was always like this, defending Caleb by suspecting me first. I replied, all materials in my possession were obtained legally and are related to my own projects, rights, and responsibilities. He replied quickly, don't burn your bridges. I called him directly. He answered immediately. Eleanor Vance. Julian, I'm asking you, did Caleb use my old proposal? There was a moment of silence on the other end. He referenced departmental materials. Referencing and copying are two different things. He's just starting out. He can't get it perfect on the first try. So you want me to fix it for him again? He was stumped. After a few seconds, he said, this project is very important. Help him revise the proposal privately. You don't even have to put your name on it. I almost laughed out loud. You don't even have to put your name on it. He said it so naturally. Over the past 5 years, I had cleaned up so many of his messes. An investor made a last-minute demand, and he had me negotiate. The delivery team had a delay, and he had me appease the client. At his mother's birthday party, Caleb showed up unexpectedly, and I had to smooth things over. Now, Caleb couldn't produce a decent proposal, and he wanted me to fix it anonymously. On what grounds? I asked. Julian's voice hardened. On the grounds that you put half your life's blood into this company. I put half my life's blood into this company, so you put me on the demotion list? I already said I didn't handle that well. Not well is not an apology. The line went quiet again. He seemed very unaccustomed to me spelling things out so clearly, word by word. In the past, if he said, I'm tired, I would stop. If he said, don't make a scene, I would back down. Now that I wasn't backing down, he found me unfamiliar. Julian, I said. From the moment I resigned, I no longer bear any unauthorized responsibility for Horizon Tech. You want to watch the company fail? I'm watching you take responsibility for your own decisions. His breathing grew heavier. What is it that you want? A divorce. Those two words fell, and the other end of the line went completely silent. After a long time, he said, "Don't threaten me with divorce." "It's not a threat," I said, looking at the evidence on my desk. "It's a notification." I hung up. Half an hour later, Caleb sent an email. He didn't send it to me directly, but CC'd Julian, HR, and a few key members of the strategic accounts team. The subject was, regarding Miss Eleanor Vance's post-resignation interference with project progression. The content was subtle, claiming that although I had resigned, I was still using my old client relationships to influence the company's internal arrangements, putting immense pressure on the new team. He said he was willing to bear the misunderstanding and hoped I wouldn't let my personal feelings affect the company's interests. The email sent the internal company chat into a frenzy again. Caleb was smart. He positioned himself as the bullied newcomer and me as the bitter ex-employee who couldn't let go. If I stayed silent, the blame would stick. If I fought back, he could continue to play the victim. After reading the email, I replied with only 4 attachments. First, the client's letter of suspension. Second, a side-by-side comparison of the pricing before and after Caleb's changes. Third, the plagiarism report of the old proposal. Fourth, my resignation, confirmation, and statement of responsibility boundaries. The body of the email had only one sentence. Mr. Reed, please clarify which of the above project risks were caused by my post-resignation interference. 10 minutes after the email was sent, no one had replied. 20 minutes later, Marcus Thorne messaged me. "Eleanor, the whole team saw it." Megan followed up immediately. He ran to Julian's office, playing the victim. I closed my email client and didn't look again. This wasn't my battle, at least not one I needed to be on the front lines for anymore. But in the evening, David Bennett called. "Eleanor, are you free right now?" "Yes." "I heard that Horizon's internal narrative is painting you as the one interfering with projects," he chuckled. "Julian came to see me personally today to explain. He said Caleb was inexperienced, but the company would arrange for you to be a behind-the-scenes consultant." My eyes grew cold. I did not agree to that. I figured. David's tone turned serious. "So I wanted to ask you, if you were to work as an independent consultant, would you be open to taking on an external risk assessment project?" I didn't answer immediately. This was an opportunity, but also a test of boundaries. I couldn't poach my former company's clients during this sensitive post-resignation period. But I could do an independent assessment based solely on the client's own needs, without touching Horizon's project data. "We can talk," I said, "but on the condition that it avoids the scope of Horizon's existing contracts, and everything is confirmed in writing." David Bennett laughed. "Now that's the Eleanor I know." After hanging up, I looked out at the darkening sky. My phone lit up again. A message from Julian. "Are you really going to take David Bennett on as a consultant?" I replied, "Within legal boundaries, that is my freedom." He replied quickly, "You were never like this before." I stared at that sentence and let out a soft breath. Never like this before. The old Eleanor would have first considered if he was in a difficult position. The new Eleanor first considers what is right for her. That's the difference. I hadn't planned on attending the industry's closed-door conference. The invitation came from David Bennett. On the phone, he said, "We're not talking about Horizon, we're talking about industry risks. Eleanor, you shouldn't disappear from this circle just because of one bad relationship." That sentence made me pause for a long time. For the past 5 years, I had tied myself so tightly to Horizon Tech that when people mentioned me, they'd say, "Julian Croft's wife. She's very capable." Few ever just called me Eleanor Vance. So that afternoon, I put on a black pantsuit and went to the hotel conference hall. I didn't sit at the main table, just took a seat in the back and listened as several clients discussed budget cuts and supply chain system upgrades for the second half of the year. Half an hour later, Julian walked in with Caleb. Caleb was dressed very formally today in a sharp light gray tailored suit, a Horizon Tech badge pinned to his chest. He saw me in an instant, and his expression froze. Julian saw me too. His steps faltered for a moment before he recovered. When the moderator introduced Horizon Tech, Julian went on stage to speak. He said the company had recently undergone an organizational upgrade, introducing a younger, more dynamic project synergy mechanism that would bring more flexible services to clients. Caleb sat in the front row, head slightly bowed, like a newly anointed star. I sat in the back, my expression unreadable. It wasn't until the Q&A session that David Bennett raised his hand. "Mr. Croft, I'd like to ask who is now the head of your strategic accounts department. Julian paused for half a second. It's being coordinated by Caleb Reed. I will be personally overseeing it. David Bennett nodded. And what about Miss Eleanor Vance? The entire hall suddenly grew quiet. Julian looked at me. Caleb turned to look at me too, a flash of panic in his eyes. Julian said, Miss Vance is taking a temporary break for personal reasons. I picked up the microphone on my table. A correction. I am not on a temporary break. I have formally resigned. The statement sent a ripple of murmurs through the audience. Julian's face changed. Caleb immediately stood up, his voice soft. Eleanor, this is an industry conference. I don't think it's the right place to discuss internal company matters, is it? I looked at him. I am merely correcting the record. David Bennett took over. This isn't a private matter. For clients, a change in project leadership is a risk item. Another client spoke up. We've always dealt with Eleanor when discussing collaborations with Horizon. This sudden change does require an explanation. Caleb's face grew paler. He forced a smile. Please rest assured, everyone. Eleanor left behind complete documentation, and I'm working hard to get up to speed. Horizon Tech isn't a one-person company. It won't stop running just because one person leaves. It was a well-delivered line, but some weren't buying it. David Bennett asked him, Mr. Reed, in the Phase 2 proposal your company sent us, you cut the maintenance fee to under 10%. Can you please explain who will bear the cost of service response for the next 3 years? Caleb looked at Julian. Julian was about to answer, but David Bennett added, I'm asking Mr. Reed. Since he's the coordinating lead, he should know. The smile on Caleb's face couldn't hold. He fumbled with the papers in his hand, his voice shaky. This part can be optimized in the future. So you don't know. The room was silent. Caleb's eyes immediately reddened. He looked at me as if deeply wronged. Eleanor, you see? They all only recognize you. I've really been trying so hard. Why can't you just give me some time? Before I could speak, a female client sitting next to me spoke up. Mr. Reed, clients are not your school teachers. We have no obligation to give you time for trial and error. Her words hit harder than mine. Caleb froze completely. Julian stood on the stage, his face grim. He looked at me, as if hoping I would step in and smooth things over. In the past, in a situation like this, I absolutely would have stood up. I would have taken over the conversation, reframed the client's concerns as constructive questions, and saved face for Horizon Tech and for Julian. But today, I just put down the microphone. I wasn't saving the day anymore. Julian had to handle it himself. Regarding the project details, we can discuss them privately after the meeting. David Bennett didn't press him further, just said lightly, Mr. Croft, we weren't buying Horizon's brand. We were buying Eleanor Vance's delivery. As he said this, all eyes in the hall turned to me. Caleb's face flushed with humiliation, and the color drained from Julian's face. I stood up. Mr. Bennett, thank you for your trust. But I have left Horizon and cannot and will not make any commitments on its behalf. I looked at everyone. If any of you require independent consulting services, you can contact me within the bounds of legal compliance. If it's about an existing Horizon project, please contact the Horizon team directly. After I finished, I picked up my bag and left. No attacks, no accusations. But everyone understood. I had cut ties with Horizon. Outside the hotel, Julian chased after me. Eleanor Vance! I stopped at the bottom of the steps. He walked quickly toward me, his breathing a little ragged. Did you have to publicly humiliate me today? I looked at him. Which part of what I said was false? He was speechless. I continued. You said I was on a temporary break. I corrected that I have formally resigned. You put Caleb in charge of clients. A client asked him a question. Julian, humiliation isn't given by others. It's something you arrange for yourself. His eyes held a suppressed rage, and also a panic. You knew Caleb couldn't handle that kind of situation. Then why did you put him up there? He was silent. He couldn't answer that question. Because the answer was simple. He wanted to promote him. But he also wanted me to be his safety net. He wanted Caleb's glory and my competence. But the world doesn't offer such cheap deals. Caleb ran out from the hotel entrance, looking frantic. Julian, did I embarrass you? Julian instinctively turned to support him. The movement was so practiced, so natural, that it dispelled the last bit of hesitation I had. I looked at them and suddenly laughed. Julian heard the laugh and turned back. What are you laughing at? How did I not see it before? His face changed slightly. I said, You're not bad at protecting someone. You just never chose to protect me. Caleb's crying stopped. Julian seemed frozen in place by my words. I didn't look at them anymore. A car pulled up. I got in. Before I closed the door, Julian suddenly grabbed it. Eleanor, let's talk. I looked at his hand. Mr. Croft, don't let the client see an even more humiliating scene. His fingers went stiff. I gently closed the door. As the car drove away, I saw in the rearview mirror Caleb standing by Julian's side, clutching his sleeve. But Julian was watching my car. A belated gaze is meaningless. After that day, Julian started trying to contact me frequently, first by phone, which I didn't answer, then by email. He said the company could draw up a new consulting agreement for me, allowing me to assist in stabilizing clients as an external party, with my fee being whatever I wanted. I replied with one sentence: I do not accept business related to Horizon Tech. Then came the texts. He said a marriage isn't a company, it can't be handled with a resignation. I didn't reply. Finally, he showed up at my apartment building. It was a temporary rental, not far from the city center, with good security. I saw him standing by his car when I went downstairs to get a package. He had lost some weight, with dark circles under his eyes. When he saw me, he immediately walked over. Eleanor. I stopped at the entrance holding the package. How did you find this place? He didn't answer. I frowned. Julian, did you track me? I was just worried about you. Worrying and tracking my location are not the same thing. He was silent for a moment. It was my mother. She had the driver follow you once. I gave a cold laugh. Excellent. The Croft family way. Embarrassment flashed across his face. I already told her off. You always tell her off, I said, clutching the box tighter. But I'm always the one who's violated. He looked at me, his voice low. Eleanor, I know you were wronged this time. I didn't speak. It was the first time he had admitted I was wronged. But it was too late. He continued. I've been thinking a lot these past few days. The Vanguard list, I really shouldn't have done it without telling you first. And Caleb's appointment was too rushed. Just too rushed? His lips tightened. I said, You're still avoiding the real issue. There were bloodshot veins in Julian's eyes. Then what do you want me to say? That I was wrong? Fine. I was wrong. His tone was a mix of defeat and frustration, as if he were completing a task he was not good at. I looked at him. What were you wrong about? He was taken aback. That question seemed harder for him than any client negotiation. After a long time, he said, I shouldn't have put your name on the list. Not enough. I shouldn't have let Caleb take your clients. Still not enough. He finally frowned. Eleanor, what is it you want from me? I suddenly felt very tired. Julian, look. It's not that you don't know how to apologize. You just don't know what you did wrong. His face darkened. I said, You were wrong to treat me as your fallback. You can take care of Caleb, compensate him, give him opportunities. But you can't just assume I will pay the price for your compensation. His expression flickered. I didn't treat you as a fallback. You did, I said, looking him in the eye. When Caleb couldn't handle the clients, you came to me. When the company was in trouble, you came to me. When your mother berated me at the dinner table, you were silent. Now that our marriage is falling apart, you say you know I was wronged. Every single time, you wait until the situation is unsalvageable before you remember me. Julian's throat moved. I just thought, we didn't need to be so meticulous between us. Right, I nodded. Because we don't need to be meticulous, my contributions don't need to be recorded. Because we don't need to be meticulous, my grievances don't need to be soothed. Because we don't need to be meticulous, my position can be given to someone else first. After all, it can just be moved back in 3 months. His face went completely white. I turned to leave. He grabbed the cardboard box. Don't go. He stopped. Let go. He didn't. Today is our wedding anniversary. I paused for a moment. I had truly forgotten. May 18th. The day we got our marriage license. Every year on this day, I would book a restaurant in advance, prepare a gift, and then pretend to casually ask him if he was free. He was always busy. Last year, on our anniversary, he was at the hospital with Caleb for a checkup. The reason was that Caleb had just returned to the country and had no family. I ate a cold steak by myself that day. Julian said in a low voice, I booked the restaurant you used to like. Let's go have a meal, okay? I looked at him and suddenly asked, Did you know I don't eat steak from that place anymore? He was stunned. I said, I stopped eating it 3 years ago after my stomach ulcer. His hand slowly let go. He didn't know. Of course, he He didn't know. In recent years, he remembered that Caleb was allergic to pollen, that Caleb was afraid of the dark, that Caleb didn't drink iced water. But he didn't remember that I had a sensitive stomach, that I didn't eat steak anymore, that I had stopped looking forward to our anniversary. Just then, a taxi pulled up to the curb. Caleb got out of the car. He saw us and stopped, his eyes immediately filling with tears. "Julian!" Julian turned, his brow furrowed. "What are you doing here?" Caleb approached, his voice trembling. "Your mother told me you were here. I didn't mean to disturb you. But something else has come up at the office. David Bennett officially sent the termination of intent letter. The board wants you back immediately." He then looked at me. "Eleanor, I know you hate me. But Horizon is really on the verge of collapse. Can you please help him this one time? Just this once." I looked at him. He cried beautifully, and his words were just as beautiful. But every time, he managed to appear precisely when Julian was about to face me. "Caleb," I asked, "do you really want me to help him?" He was stunned. I said, "If I go back, strategic accounts will be mine again. The clients will still recognize me. Your special budget will be audited. The proposals you signed off on will be investigated. Are you sure?" His face instantly turned white. Julian looked at him too. Caleb's lips moved. I was just worried about the company." "No." I held the box, my voice calm. "You're worried that the moment I come back, you'll be nothing." Caleb's tears stopped. This time, he couldn't immediately start crying again. Julian's expression changed. He was finally seeing a glimpse of something he had been unwilling to see before. Caleb frantically grabbed his sleeve. "Julian, I'm not—" I took a document from my bag and handed it to Julian. He took it automatically. The cover read, "Divorce Agreement." His hand froze. "Eleanor, you said a marriage can't be handled like a resignation, right?" I looked at him. "Then let's handle it with a divorce proceeding." Caleb stood to the side, his face a ghastly shade. Julian stared at the words as if they were an irreversible judgment. "I won't sign it." "You will," I said. "If not today, then someday." I walked around them and into the apartment building. This time, Julian didn't stop me. As the elevator doors closed, I saw him looking down at the agreement. Caleb stood beside him, for the first time not daring to touch him. I knew he was finally panicking. But the person he was panicking for was never coming back. Julian contacted me again via a formal email. The subject was polite. Invitation to a meeting regarding Horizon Tech project responsibilities. The content was, in essence, that the company had experienced some turmoil due to external misunderstandings, and they hoped I, as the former head of strategic accounts, would attend an internal meeting to clarify the facts of the project handover and stabilize team morale. I laughed when I read it. The email was framed as an invitation, but it was really an attempt to get me to endorse their narrative. As long as I stood in that conference room and said the handover was fine and the clients were just temporarily observing, Julian could stabilize the situation. But why should I? I replied, "I can attend, but I will only state the facts. I will not assume any subsequent responsibility for Horizon Tech." 5 minutes later, he replied, "Agreed." I knew he had no other choice. The meeting was scheduled for Friday afternoon in the same executive conference room. When I walked in, it was packed. Besides the executives, there were key members from strategic accounts, finance, HR, and the delivery team. Caleb sat in the front row, looking haggard. Julian stood at the front, and his gaze clearly lingered on me when I entered. I didn't take the seat he had arranged for me. I sat in an empty chair near the door, ready to leave at any moment. Julian began to speak. "The company has gone through some turbulence recently. There have been external misunderstandings about our internal adjustments. We've asked Eleanor to come back today to clarify the facts." He looked at me. "Eleanor, would you like to say a few words?" I stood up and picked up the remote. All right. The big screen lit up. The first slide was not the company introduction he had prepared. It was the Project Vanguard list. A low gasp went through the room. Julian's face changed. "Eleanor," I didn't look at him. "Since we're here to state the facts, let's start with the facts." I pointed to the list. "This is the formal demotion notice I received on the day I resigned. My name is at the top. The approver is Julian Croft, CC'd to HR, Finance, and the board office." Caleb's face went white. The second slide was the client transition plan. This is the transition plan generated on Caleb's third day at the company. It shows that the 3 major strategic clients I was responsible for were to be gradually transferred to the Caleb Reed Project Synergy Group within 3 months. Someone whispered, "So it was true." The third slide was the budget adjustment record. This is Caleb's special budget of $150,000, sourced from the Strategic Accounts Department's delivery assurance budget. The finance manager, Emily Foster, lowered her head. I didn't say her name, only stating, if this budget transfer had continued, it would have directly impacted the quality of the summer quarter's delivery. Julian finally couldn't take it anymore. Enough. These are internal management documents, not suitable for display in a company-wide meeting. I looked at him. Then what was the purpose of inviting me here? To have me say it was all a misunderstanding? His face was grim. I continued to the next slide. On the screen was Caleb's revised proposal. This is the pricing version after Caleb took over. He changed the phased delivery to a one-time all-inclusive package and cut the long-term maintenance fees to a level that couldn't cover costs. The head of delivery couldn't help but speak up. We objected at the time, but Mr. Reed said Mr. Croft had approved it. All eyes turned to Julian. Caleb scrambled to his feet. I didn't do it on purpose. I just wanted to get results quickly so everyone would accept me. I looked at him. Wanting results doesn't mean you can use client risk as a training ground. His tears started to fall again. Eleanor, why do you have to push me like this? I admit I'm not as good as you, but I really didn't have any malicious intent. After you left, everyone compared me to you. I was under so much pressure. His words swayed a few of the less informed employees. He was very good at packaging his incompetence as being bullied. I switched to the next slide. It was the text message he had sent me. Julian said he can only stop being a CEO when he's with me. The room fell silent. Caleb's crying got stuck in his throat. Julian froze. I didn't say much, just asked him, "Is this also work pressure?" Caleb's lips trembled. I just misspoke. You didn't misspeak, I said, my voice not loud. You knew exactly what you wanted, and it wasn't just the job. No one in the room dared to make a sound. I continued, but I'm not here today to discuss personal feelings. I am here to clarify 3 things. I held up my fingers. First, I completed a legal and proper handover before my resignation. There was no malicious abandonment of my duties. Second, the clients paused their cooperation due to changes in leadership, pricing risks, and unclear delivery responsibility, not because of my post-resignation interference. Third, from the effective date of my resignation, I no longer represent Horizon Tech, nor will I be responsible for any projects not authorized by me. I displayed the final slide. It was my resignation confirmation, the HR process record, and the statement of responsibility boundaries. Sarah Jenkins stood up. Her voice was a bit shaky but clear. I can confirm that all of Miss Vance's resignation procedures were compliant, and her handover materials were complete. Mr. Croft requested a retraction of the process 3 days later, but at that point, the conditions for a unilateral retraction were no longer met. Julian shot a look at her. Sarah's face went pale, but she didn't sit down. Marcus Thorne also stood up. I can confirm that Miss Vance archived all client materials before she left. Mr. Reed later requested we provide access to her private communication notes, which we did not. Megan followed, standing up. I can confirm that as well. One by one, people in the room who had been looking down started to look up. Julian stood at the front, his face growing uglier by the second. Caleb sank back into his chair, tears streaming down his face, but no one was comforting him. I turned off the PowerPoint. Mr. Croft, I've stated the facts. He stared at me, his voice low and tight. Are you satisfied? I looked at him. You still think I did this for satisfaction? He didn't speak. Julian, I didn't come here to get revenge on you. I came here to return the blame that doesn't belong to me. I picked up my bag. After today, I have no relationship with Horizon Tech. I turned and walked toward the door. Behind me, Julian suddenly spoke. Eleanor Vance, are you really going to cut ties so cleanly? I stopped but didn't turn back. Are you going to throw away 5 years of marriage too? Everyone in the room held their breath. I turned to face him. Julian, you were the one who put our 5-year marriage on the demotion list. His face went completely ashen. I didn't linger. As I walked out of the conference room, I heard the voice of the representative from the board office. Mr. Croft, the board requires a written explanation for this organizational adjustment. The door closed behind me. I stood in the hallway and let out a long breath. I hadn't won any applause, but I had won back my integrity, and that was more important. The appointment at the county clerk's office was for the following Monday. I had set the time. Julian hadn't confirmed until Sunday night, when he sent a text. "I'll be there tomorrow." I looked at it for a long time and replied with only one word. "Okay." No extra words were necessary. On Monday morning, I arrived earlier than he did. At the entrance, a few young couples were holding hands, their faces a mix of nervousness and excitement. I looked at them and suddenly remembered that day 5 years ago. Julian and I had stood at the same entrance. He had held my hand and said, "Eleanor, no matter how hard things get for the company, we'll get through it together." I believed him. Only later did I realize that getting through it together meant I would be doing most of the getting through. At 9 a.m. sharp, Julian arrived. He was wearing a black suit, as if heading to a board meeting. When he saw me, his pace slowed. "Been waiting long?" "No." I handed him the documents. "Let's go in." He didn't take them. "Eleanor, can we talk first?" I glanced at the line. "We've talked many times." "I looked over those early financial records you organized last night." His voice was a bit hoarse. "I just realized the money you put into the company from selling your condo was never properly settled." "Yes." "Why didn't you remind me?" I looked at him. "I did." He was stunned. "After the Series B funding round, I sent you an email. You replied that we were husband and wife. There was no rush to settle it." His face went pale. He remembered. Back then, the company was just starting to take off. His mother wanted a bigger house. Julian said the cash flow was tight and asked me to wait. I waited. And that wait turned into years. Julian said in a low voice, "I'll pay you back. Just follow the agreement." "Does it have to come down to an agreement between us?" I looked at him and suddenly felt the question was very light. "Julian, agreements don't hurt relationships. People who don't respect agreements do." He was silent. His phone rang. He glanced at it. It was his mother. He didn't answer. Immediately after, a call from Caleb came in. He still didn't answer. "You can take it," I said. "It's fine." But the phone kept ringing. Finally, frustrated, he answered on speaker. Caleb's panicked voice immediately filled the air. "Julian, the board members came to see me. They said I have to cooperate with an investigation over the budget and proposal issues. Can you please come back? I really don't know what to do." Julian closed his eyes. "Cooperate with them as they ask." Caleb was stunned. But you said you would protect me." I saw Julian's hand clench into a fist. On the other end, Caleb seemed to have completely panicked. "Julian, I admit I wanted to prove myself. And I admit I don't like Eleanor. But you were the one who told me to sign all those documents. You can't just push all the blame onto me now." Julian's eyes shot open. Caleb was still venting. "I came back because you promised me a position. You said Eleanor was strong and wouldn't really mind these things. You said she was your wife and would clean up the mess in the end." People were coming and going at the entrance to the county clerk's office. Julian stood there, his face slowly turning gray. Caleb was still sobbing. "Julia, who's she? Hushin zero, Caleb. I'm not a bad person, I was just scared. I was scared I'd have nothing. Scared you would go back to her in the end. That's why I wanted her position. I wanted everyone to acknowledge me." Julian hung up the phone. He looked as if he had finally been forced to hear the truth. But it was a truth I had heard long ago. He looked at me, a momentary panic in his eyes. "Eleanor, Let's go in," I interrupted. His voice was raw. I didn't know he thought that way. "You knew," I said, looking at him. "You just enjoyed being needed by him, and you enjoyed me cleaning up after you." His lips moved, but he couldn't form a rebuttal. We went inside. At the counter, the clerk verified our documents and asked if we were both here voluntarily. "I am," I said. Julian didn't answer right away. The clerk looked up at him. He was holding the pen, the veins on the back of his hand standing out. Just then, his phone buzzed again. This time it was the board office. He glanced at it but didn't answer. The clerk asked again, "Sir, are you voluntarily filing for divorce?" Julian looked at me. In that moment, his eyes held something I had waited years to see. Regret, pain, reluctance. But it was too late. I looked at him calmly. "Julian, don't make me wait for you again." His eyes reddened. After a long time, he whispered, "I am." The process was faster than I expected. When I received the divorce certificate, the sun was shining right on the counter. The small red booklet felt light, too light to end a 5-year marriage. But it had. Walking out of the building, Julian followed behind me. "Eleanor." I stopped. His voice was low. "If I had never let Caleb join the company, would we not be like this?" I thought for a moment. Maybe it would have happened later. He was taken aback. The problem was never just Caleb, I said. It was that you always believed I would never leave. The wind blew, messing up my hair. Julian raised his hand, as if to brush it away like he used to. I took a step back. His hand froze in midair. Don't do that anymore, I said. He slowly lowered his hand. What will you do now? He asked, unable to finish. I finished for him. I'll be fine. It wasn't to comfort him, it was to tell myself. A car pulled up. Before I got in, Julian suddenly said, Can I still contact you? I looked at him. For work, there's no need. For personal matters, even less. He was speechless. The car door closed. As it pulled away, I saw in the rearview mirror that he was still standing at the entrance, clutching the divorce certificate like he had finally lost something he thought would never leave. I didn't cry. I just changed his contact name in my phone from Julian to his full name, and then unpinned him from the top of my contacts. The first month after the divorce, I was too busy to look back. David Bennett introduced me to 2 companies for independent risk consulting. I didn't rush to start a company, just set up a personal studio called Vance Advisory. The name came from my own, and from the idea that sound advice builds great ventures. The day I signed my first independent contract, the conference room was small. It didn't have the impressive glass walls of Horizon Tech, nor a team of people fawning over me. But as I sat in the main seat, I felt an unprecedented sense of peace. Flipping to the last page of the contract, the client asked me, Miss Vance, are you sure you only want to be a consultant? Not consider leading a team again? I smiled. I'll consider it in the future. But this time, I want to go at my own pace. The client nodded. It's your pace that we're interested in. I signed my name, Eleanor Vance. Not Mrs. Croft, not the former head of Horizon Tech, just Eleanor Vance. That afternoon, Sarah Jenkins sent me a message. She had resigned from Horizon Tech. Emily Foster had also submitted her resignation. Marcus and Megan didn't leave immediately, but had both requested to be transferred away from any projects related to Caleb. The results of Horizon Tech's internal audit came out. Caleb's special budget had numerous unclear expenditures. His errors in client proposals had led to the termination of project intent. The board demanded that Julian take responsibility for mismanagement. Caleb resigned. Before he left, he sent a long message to the company-wide chat, saying he just wanted to prove himself, that Eleanor Vance was too overbearing and suffocated him, and that Julian had given him hope, but failed to protect him in the end. No one responded. In the adult world, crying the loudest doesn't get you off the hook. Julian's project approval authority was partially suspended by the board. The company was still running, but it was no longer his one-man show. When this news reached me, I felt little emotion. I didn't want to see him fall spectacularly. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't being dragged back into the mud. In the evening, I returned to my new office. The sunset was spreading across the sky, casting a warm glow on my desk. I had just opened my laptop when I received an email from Julian. The subject was just 2 words. I'm sorry. I opened it. It was long. He said he had finally reviewed all the early records and only now realized how much money I had put into Horizon, how many risks I had shielded it from, how much pressure I had absorbed. He said that when the board held him accountable, it was the first time he had stood in a position of being questioned, and only then did he understand what I had endured. He said he didn't see Caleb off the day he left. He said he had driven by our old house and saw the empty entryway, and only then did he realize that the home was never held up by the house itself. At the end, he wrote, Eleanor, I don't dare hope you'll come back. I just want to tell you in my own words that I was truly wrong. I read it, then archived the email without replying. Not because of hatred, but because it was no longer necessary. Some apologies are meant for past wounds. My wounds had already scarred over, and I had no desire to reopen them. At 8 p.m., I received a text from an unknown number. Eleanor, I'm leaving this city. I used to be so envious of you, and also so afraid of you. Now I know that the position I fought for was one I could never hold. I'm sorry. I glanced at it and deleted it. I didn't need to catch Caleb's apology either. At 9 p.m., the studio's group chat lit up. Sarah sent a picture of her and Emily eating hot pot, both smiling happily. Megan wrote in the chat, Eleanor, I rejected an unreasonable request to take the blame for something today. It felt great. Marcus replied, Congratulations, you finally graduated. I looked at the screen and couldn't help but smile. It turned out that when one person stands up and sets boundaries, the people around them slowly learn to stand up straight too. That was more satisfying to me than any revenge. A few months later, I saw Julian again at an industry signing event. He was sitting in the audience, much thinner. I went on stage as the head of Vance Advisory to sign a contract with a client. When the spotlight hit me, I suddenly remembered a long time ago when Julian said he would put me in the brightest seat. The truth is, you don't need someone to give you that seat. You can walk up to it yourself. After the signing and the applause, as I came off stage, Julian was waiting at the end of the hallway. He didn't come close, just watched me from a few steps away. Eleanor. I stopped. He was holding a file. The money you put into the company, I've had the lawyers calculate it and it's been transferred. The vested stock options will also be settled according to the agreement. Thank you. You deserve it. I nodded. He looked at me as if he had a lot to say, but in the end he only said, "You're doing well now." Yes, I didn't deny it. He gave a bitter smile. I used to think you couldn't leave Horizon, and that you couldn't leave me. I said calmly, I used to think so too. His eyes reddened slightly. And now? Now I know that people only truly live as themselves when they leave the wrong place. Someone called my name from the end of the hallway. Miss Vance, the client is waiting for you. I looked at Julian. I have to go. He nodded but didn't move. I walked past him. This time, he didn't grab my hand, didn't call my name. From behind me, I heard him say very softly, "Eleanor Vance, I wish you all the best." My steps paused for a fraction of a second. I didn't turn back. "And I hope you learn to respect others." That was the last thing I said to him. Not a blessing, but a final settlement. Months later, Vance Advisory moved into a new office space. It wasn't huge, but it had great natural light. I put a plant by the window, very similar to the one in my old office. When Megan came to visit, she pointed at it and said, "Eleanor, this one looks so healthy." I smiled. Yes, it can thrive even in a new place. She didn't catch the meaning behind my words, just nodded seriously. Of course, anything you grow will thrive. I looked at the new leaves and suddenly felt a sense of clarity. For so many years, I had been sheltering others from the wind and rain. Sheltering Julian from the company's risks. Sheltering his family from the cracks in their facade. Sheltering Caleb from his own incompetence. Sheltering a marriage from the rot that had set in long ago. Only later did I understand that you can't always be someone else's fallback. If you're a fallback for too long, you end up with no path of your own. Now, I am no longer Julian's bigger picture, nor am I anyone's safety net. I am Eleanor Vance, and I am moving forward, not looking back.